It's like that warm blanket and that cup of soup when you have a little bit of a head cold and you are absolutely, at a zero energy, no motivation. It's like when your mom comes over and you're a little kid, and he puts that blanket over your shoulders, has a nice bowl of Campbell soup. Football was back this weekend in full force to comfort us in a way that we never knew we needed comfort before. And I think I speak for us both extremely at this moment, saying that we needed the comfort of football more than ever in our adult lives, for sure. This weekend, after what quite possibly is maybe the hardest emotional week I've had as an adult, and I know you as well. Um, we want to start this extremely exciting episode of the show as football is back here at the Football Lounge with Dan and Mark by saying that we lost our biggest cheerleader, our best friend, and someone who supported us beyond all means, even though he wasn't necessarily the most football inclined person as far as talking the X's and O's. With the passing of our beloved best friend Nate Byrne, and football was there for us this weekend. And you know what? That's what makes football special. And anything, when people have a love for something that's beyond sports, whether you're a car guy or whatever it may be, that that is your comfort. Football is our comfort, and we certainly needed it this weekend.
Yeah, definitely leaned into it a lot more. Was just ready for that. Yeah, it was an extremely emotionally taxing week. And you said it all perfectly. So, we miss Nate a ton. He is obviously our biggest cheerleader, as you said, and something I want to do. We started the YouTube page after we did our presidential uh, video where we
Yes.
picked an entire football team of presidents, and Nate Byrne was a guest on that show. So obviously, if you're listening now and you haven't listened to that episode, I believe it was the first season, and it may have been really early 2021, but I believe it was the 2020 to 2021 season where we did that episode, and Nate was great in it. And so, yeah, we're gonna have to dig that up and post it to YouTube as well, so people can listen to it on that platform as well. I don't think we have the video because it was pretty like choppy and all of that, but it was good content for sure. I know I've talked to a lot of people who aren't even big football fans, but they enjoyed that particular episode because it's just a bunch of shenanigans and a bunch of guys goofing off, talking, trying to build a football team of U.S. presidents.
It is a small glimpse into what our world was with Nate, and how lucky
It
we
was
were
the
to have
merging
him.
of our two
Yeah,
biggest passions, right?
absolutely. And what I will say, uh, we love doing this show. We do it because we're passionate about it, and the fact that Nate would listen, it would take a break from whether it was Greg Gutfeld or whatever else he was filling his ears with, just Sticks and Phil Collins and the Beatles, whatever else it may
The
be.
James Bond films, of
Yeah,
course.
just to the soundtracks to all the Bond films. How many times did listen to that god awful CD in his Jeep Liberty over and over again? And I think he even bought me it one time just because, like, I know you want this. Like, I don't, but I'll take it. That he would listen to us, and that's what a best friend does. That's what a best friend does, and we were lucky to have a best friend. And it is weird to now be together here doing the show without him, and without knowing that he's there and with us. But I will say that we know we had people who listened to the show because of Nate. Like, he turned people on to the show.
Yeah, he
So
did.
so
Yep.
we appreciate everyone. We got so much support and love from so many of our friends and family over the last week and a half here. We lost Nate on the 6th of September, and we will obviously every show from here on out dedicated to him and his memory. And as long as we're both alive, keeping his memory and all those great stories alive. I will say the hard thing about losing someone like Nate Byrne is that he had talk about a steel trap of a memory. I was talking with another one of our good friends, John Jorgensen. I was like, I think one of the things that makes me most sad is that when you'd hang out with a Nate Byrne, you would start telling a story, and then he would remember a million more details of the story that you had already completely forgotten. And that is that's made of the hardest things, because that is gone. That encyclopedia of your life in a lot of ways is gone. But
it was a steel trap.
Football was there for us this weekend, and both of our teams especially had they were heavy underdogs and came out with big wins. It felt really good. My wife even said to me after the Bears won, she's like, "You needed a win." I was like, "Yeah, I definitely did."
Right.
And the Bears pulled through, and Mitch and the Steelers pulled it through too.
Somehow by the skin of their teeth, for sure. Yeah, it was a therapeutic Sunday, and this show, to be back here too, it's kind of therapy for us as well, and to get back into the groove of things. So we are happy to be back, and happy to be talking football after a full week of games, with just the Monday night game on the horizon for us here. So we obviously won't be discussing that contest, but every other one, we're going to rifle through these games, give us some quick thoughts on each of them, and touch on, a little bit of some narratives to come out of these contests. So we'll start with the Thursday night game, the Bills at the Rams. Everyone was anticipating this one. We both weren't super bullish on taking major spreads or anything like that. You had the Rams money line, and I was scared of the Bills, a small spread. So I said I'm going to take them money line as well. But Bills end up winning big, 31-10.
Yeah,
it was a Josh Allen performance that we were expecting. He throws for 3 touchdowns, nearly 300 yards passing through the air as well. But really, it was the story of the Bills' defensive front that got after Matt Stafford and company constantly.
8 sacks.
Eight sacks, and Matt Stafford gets baited into 3 interceptions in this one as well. Allen Robinson seemingly absent from the game plan. Cam Akers as well, so it's a little bit confusing there, but Buffalo was able to put together a very convincing performance, a 21-point win for them. It's just week 1. We're going to stress this probably over the next month, that a lot of these games don't matter in a vacuum, but it's what we have to work off of right now. What were your thoughts, takeaways from the first game of the NFL season?
Well, obviously blown away by the Bills' defensive front. I mean, I know the Rams' offensive line is different, and it's not as good as it was last year, especially when you lose a guy who's a borderline Hall of Famer in Whitworth. But I'll just say this. To me, I'm not going to sit here and say Super Bowl hangover. The Rams offense was so, you could just tell, out of sync. Like, and when you start to put all the pieces together, it makes sense. So my biggest takeaway is I don't want to overreact to the Rams. I still really like the Rams. I still think the Rams are going to be a very good football team, especially in the NFC, the weaker NFC. The Cardinals looked bad this opening weekend. The Niners looked bad this opening weekend. Everyone's so worried about the NFC West, the vaunted NFC West. Well, they all had dud performances. The Seahawks, if they win tonight, which they won't, they'll be the only undefeated team in the NFC West. So don't want to panic. I still think the Rams are the class of that division, because what I mean is no hangover, just out of sync. When you now put all the pieces together, Stafford didn't really play and practice a ton, dealing with the elbow. They clearly were babying him, and they clearly just did no relationship with Allen Robinson. Didn't play any in the preseason. None of the starters did. That offensive line has talent. They need time to gel. You could just tell there were missed communications. The Bills just got away with some things that weren't like, oh no, your players are bad. It's just like your schemes are out of whack. The run systems are out of whack. No Cam Akers, no Allen Robinson, only 2 targets, I think, for Allen Robinson. I just want to take a breath with the Rams. If the Rams look this bad against the Falcons next week, then I'll be on the show next week going, we got a problem. We got a real problem, maybe in LA. Now for the Bills, to their credit, they won that game, and they absolutely showed glimpses of what the Bills can just, their ceiling can just be so extremely high. But they also showed you there's still a little bit of that last year Bills, where remember, they lost to the Jags on the road. They lost to the Patriots in that crazy cold wind game where they can just kind of kill themselves. And you saw it. I mean, the fact that the game was as close as it was in the first half was because the Bills killed themselves. The 2 interceptions, the fumble, they can be a little bull in the china shop and get a wild. And that's because they have the personality of their quarterback. But when push comes to shove, the Bills they look like a Super Bowl favorite. Absolutely, after week 1. And I don't want to panic on the Rams yet.
Yeah, they performed as advertised, did the Buffalo Bills. The LA Rams, I agree, it's certainly not time to panic. The only thing I get Duke concerned about is I think the Matt Stafford elbow thing is a bigger deal than a lot of people let on. I really do. To me, it sounds, from what they've talked about with the Tommy John, all that, it sounds a lot like what Big Ben was dealing with ahead of the 2019 season. And all it took was that second game where he had a weird throw and he was done for the year. He had to have surgery. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that's actually what Matt Stafford is dealing with. But I do know they were using similar tactics to help manage the pain for Ben when he had his elbow thing. So it's unsettling, to say the least. But we'll see kind of how he looks next week. It did appear that the mechanics were a little bit off. All right, we'll kind of get into the Sunday slate then after that. The 49ers and the Bears, which I guess I'll just nickname the Slush Bowl at this point, because that's pretty much what it was. Mounds and mounds of rain over there on the beautiful, glorious Soldier Field grass that everyone knows and loves. Yeah, there's a reason they're going to Arlington Heights pretty soon. But obviously, there was a lot of rain. You're going to get a lot of rain regardless.
Any field will look like that with how much rain there was. Yeah. It was crazy.
It was just wild to see them squeegeeing the field beforehand and watching them dive in celebration.
The turf actually held up pretty good. That new turf they put in like 4 days ago. Yeah. It wasn't like the turf was flying everywhere. It just was. I mean, it was literally like there was 2 inches of water.
Impossible to manage. Very difficult to manage there. But the Bears come away with a uninspiring, if you will, 19-10 win. But hey, it's a win against a what a lot of people have dubbed as a playoff team this year. One of the contenders and one of the high-flying, young, up-and-coming quarterbacks. I certainly thought that they should have drafted Justin Fields at the time. I thought the Jets should have done the same thing, but they didn't. Trey Lance is their guy. He did not look good in this game. No one really did. I was impressed with how Justin Fields was able to, settle in and find and able to find a way to get the big plays that are needed in a game of this. Like, you're going to need someone to just come up with a few big throws, big plays, and that should be enough to carry you over the top, especially with how their defense was playing. Justin did that. Trey did not, and that really ended up being the difference maker in this one. Not to mention, of course, the Bears defense coming through big with some turnovers there as well. But I thought this was a pretty good game for Justin Fields, given the elements and everything that they had to deal with.
Didn't I say on this show like a month and a half ago, the line was 6, and I said you absolutely have to take the Bears -6. They're getting 6 points at home against this Niners team. I've been on this for a long time. To me, this was such an easy upset to predict. And then the game started, and at halftime, I was going, "Oh my God, I'm like Groundhog's Day. It does not matter who my coach is, who my GM is, who my quarterback is. My team sucks, like offensively sucks." And what was so inspiring as a Bears fan, you said a non-inspiring win. It was inspiring, is that you watched a team come out in the second half and they made adjustments. They felt more comfortable.
What is that?
And when push came to shove, when the elements were terrible for everyone, they still found a way to make plays. And I will say, I agree with you. Justin Fields in the second half felt like, okay, this sucks. My offensive line is really being hammered by one of the best defensive fronts in all of football. A great defensive front. And in the end, the second half, they kind of held their own, and they gave Justin just enough time to let Justin do what he does. He makes ridiculous plays. His ceiling is so high. If he can improve on just quick decisions, quick passes, he struggles a lot throwing the comeback routes and the out routes to the sideline. So if he can work on those timing things, the accuracy with that stuff, the dude's ceiling is so high. And Lance is a stud. I mean, you see the physicality. He is, I mean, just like built like a brick. And but I mean, they turtled up. I mean, in the second half, the Niners just turtled up. It was crazy. The Bears like scored their first touch. I was like, oh, okay, the Bears have a pulse. They're not going to get totally blown out. And then it kept going, and the Niners just kept shooting themselves in the foot. You got to feel great for that win as a Bears fan. It gives you some hope for this season that you're going to prove the SI. I knew we were going to prove the Sports Illustrators of the world wrong. They're going to win more than 3 games. They're not going to be bottom sellers of the league. But it helps you at least show to the national media, you know what? You guys were a little bit wrong. Maybe my prediction of playoffs is too much, but they're going to be involved in games. This defense of schemes, they got a lot of talent, young guys with big ceilings. And for the Niners, I mean, I felt this way. This season is going to be so tense. When you have Jimmy Garoppolo, the Niners need to trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the Cowboys today.
Yeah.
You can just tell it's too tense already in that room. Every missed throw from Trey Lance feels like, Jimmy G, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I mean, when you know that someone's lingering there that's brought them to a Super Bowl, that's a good quarterback. It's a different situation sometimes when, you've got a guy who's a bridge quarterback and then he gets overtaken. This isn't the case. I mean, Jimmy G was brought in as the franchise guy several years ago. He still has that capability to, carry a team to the playoffs and make good decisions. So yeah, when you're not having a great outing, now I will say, the big thing as we've talked about is the elements were, one of the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
Probably not the best game to judge Trey Lance's performance, and obviously no one was going to be calling for Jimmy G after one game. But it does just feel like, if things start stacking, what's to stop them from doing it? Because the window is still right now, and they don't have time to mess around.
Yeah, you saw it with the defense. I mean, their defense is legit.
Legit. But the Bears outscoring the 49ers in this one 19-3 in the second half, and that was of course the difference maker, the ability to adjust.
It was beautiful.
And honestly, man, the way the team responded to Justin, he just feels like the dude this year.
Yep.
He's the guy, it's his team, and everyone's following him. Like even at the end there, a silly thing like him leading the charge to do the celebration in the water. It's like the whole team was like, all right, let's follow Justin. Like he seems much more comfortable and relaxed in that role. And I think that's important.
It's huge. I couldn't be happier on a Monday morning than that. Like obviously if he had thrown for 300 yards and all that, but for everything with the expectations going in, and after that first half, man, it was that beautiful to see 19 points in the second half, and the defense kept playing big. I'm ready to move on. I will just say this last little bit. I honestly think it's going to feel tight in San Francisco while Jimmy G is still there. And if you're committed to Trey Lance, I think now's the time to milk Dallas for a second rounder, a third rounder, and move on.
I don't know if they can get that high of one. That's the problem. But I will agree with you that they need to move him. The price tag, may go down a little bit because of, or may go up a little bit, I should say, because of the urgent need for Dallas if they want to be able to compete this year. But we'll get to that when we get to the Cowboys game for sure. Let's move to the Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals, taking on the defending AFC North champions and the AFC champions in Joe Burrow and company over there. And, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense really was the story of the game. Obviously, starting things off with a sack by Cam Hayward and then a pick six from Mcl Fitzpatrick kind of set the tone there. 7 sacks of Joe Burrow in this one. By the way, it was 7 sacks for Buffalo's defense, not 8.
7. Okay.
But 7, that's a lot of sacks. Steelers ending up with 7 sacks as well, and 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions of Joe Burrow in this one. quite an impressive performance from the defense. The offense was slow to start throughout. That's why this game was really kind of just tug and pull for
Yeah.
most of the game. It felt like the Steelers were in control. Go up 17-6 at the break. They still felt comfortable. Slowly let Cincinnati get back into it because Mitch and company really couldn't develop a rhythm. Their run game couldn't get going because the O-line was just poor. And, as expected, unfortunately, coming into the year, we knew that there was going to be some wrinkles there. But at the end of the day, the Bengals end up seemingly winning the game in the waning second with a touchdown pass to Jamar Chase. But Minka Fitzpatrick, once again, showing why that trade for one first rounder was such a beautiful one in 2019 as he comes in, blocks the extra point, keeps the game alive, and they end up winning this in overtime 23-20. A wild game. Grace said this, and she's only been watching the Steelers for a couple years since dating me, and she even knew it. She's like, it's never easy, and it's never easy with the Steelers. They never
No.
can just blow. They can never blow out a team, even when things are going good. They
Yeah.
can't pile on. They keep the suspense going to the very end. They did it in this one, and they lost some key players. We'll get to that in a moment. But
Mike Tomlin
it
is
was
like
good to
is
come
like
away.
Jordan Peele. He's just good at suspenseful directing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's my biggest takeaway. Again, I'm not overreacting to the Bengals. Burrow again was a guy he had that appendectomy. He had lost a bunch of weight. He's trying to get his body back in shape. No preseason action. He looked off, but he'll be fine. Again, if they're 0-3, 0-4, or this spirals into something, we can address that when we get to that point. Don't want to panic. It's a division opponent who plays you well. And if you're a Steelers fan, if I was in your shoes this morning, I'd feel so.
It doesn't feel great
because you barely win. It takes overtime and a missed extra point to win a game in which you got 5 turnovers.
Not just that, in which you won the turnover battle 5-0.
5-0,
and you should have lost.
Yeah, and you should have lost. That's obviously concerning.
Rough,
but their defense is really good, even without the defensive player of the year. But that could be, honestly, maybe even a more impactful loss for their roster than maybe Dak Prescott. Dak's the quarterback, so you can never place a D lineman over a quarterback. But it just goes to show you how impactful TJ Watt really is. And so, listen, the Steelers, I feel like if you're a Steelers fan, it's a little bit like a Bears. Hey, we kind of stole one that no one thought we should win. Let's see if we can build on this. And in the end, maybe this is that win where you look back on it and it helps you get to 9-8 instead of 8-9. And that's huge. That's really huge early in the game. I know it's early. You got plenty of season left, but these wins and losses do count. So as a Steelers fan, it's fun to see Mitch out there, and Mitch has got some really great wide receivers. Hopefully it feels like I felt like the game plan was really conservative for Mitch in the second half. At some point in time, you just got to let him play, and that offensive line, I know it needs help, but you just got to let it happen, I think.
Sometimes with offensive lines too is, it's not a comforting thing, but sometimes they just need time to gel as a unit when there's a lot of new guys. And the Bengals are a prime example. The entire starting lineup is new essentially. So for all those 5 guys to be in sync in week 1, that's a tall task to ask. They're going to get better throughout the year, and hopefully that's the case for Pittsburgh as well. But yeah, it is concerning when it's that close of a game, given how dominant your defense was. It looks like what I'm seeing today is that TJ Watt, they're thinking it's a little more optimistic that it might just be a torn muscle that would take him out closer to a month or so, which would be good, obviously. Najee Harris got hurt, a foot injury there. Kind of see what happens with that as well. So a couple guys banged up, not great start. Probably would have taken the loss if it meant TJ was healthy, but nonetheless, a win against the defending AFC champs. You can't scoff at that, and I can't complain, certainly, as a Steelers fan myself. Just encouraged by how the team rallied to get the win, especially when it seemed very bleak at the end there. So that says something for sure. And did you notice Mike Tomlin got the guys the black Air Force shoes before the game? I had no idea what that was. I had to look it up on Urban Dictionary and stuff. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, look it up, because there's a there's a meaning behind that, but it's a little
Tomlin's good,
colorful
man.
meaning, I would say. But he's good. Saints at the Falcons, not a game I don't
Wild,
think we were like stoked to see or look
wild.
at. But it was a wild ending in this one. Jameis Winston, the truth, ends up bringing this team into field goal range, and the last second able to get the game-winning field goal, 27-26 over the Falcons. I will say, so Jameis looked pretty good in this one, at least second half. Really, first half was pretty rough for both sides. But Cordero Patterson looked good for the Falcons,
Yeah.
and Mariota, he was running a lot. He had over 70 yards rushing in this one, was capable against a really good Saints defense. So there were some encouraging signs there, I would say, for Atlanta, despite, this obviously not going to be a season that, they're contenders, but some encouraging signs there. And I thought Jameis answered the bell, given the rough start,
Yep.
came back
Absolutely.
and helped lead the team to a victory with some of these new weapons. And Michael Thomas is back, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, agree with you 100% on Jameis, but rough start. And it just goes to show if Jameis can find the rhythm, build the chemistry, and not turn the ball over, the Saints offense, Jarvis Landry making big plays. Michael Thomas is back.
They got dudes.
They got a ton of dudes. And so, and Alvin Kamara will eventually, come back as well. So there is this Saints team you start to think about, and I undervalued them. Remember, I was the one who said, I think they will be in contention, but eventually fade and not make the playoffs. Already winning again, it's a division opponent on the road in a hostile environment to play that well in the second half against a Falcons team that, credit the Falcons, and we'll talk about them here in a second as well, with the Lions and the Texans. They were in that category, and we'll see if the Seahawks belong in this category. I think Seahawks fans are hoping so. Of those teams that we know they're not great and they're probably going to lose a lot of games, but you still want them to just be competitive. You don't want your team, if it's bad, like the Jets, to just get shellacked and it be like, oh, this is going to be a long season. That's a Falcons team. If I'm watching and go, good, we lost, but we're feisty. You want to lose as a Falcons team. You want CJ Stroud. You know what I mean? Like, you want that number 1 overall pick. So you want to lose, but you while you're watching the games, you want to see the potential and the feistiness and pits and all this stuff. So kind of a win-win for Falcons fans.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't think they had lofty expectations going into it. So tempered expectations, and they probably exceeded those for the Falcons fans in this one. Saints off to a 1-0 start. So good stuff for them right out of the gate. The Eagles on the road at the Lions. The Lions, a chippy team. We both were kind of talking about this. We both were much higher on the Lions coming into the season than maybe consensus, although they do end up losing this game. It was a much closer battle against a really good Eagles team. I think what stood out to me the most was just like Jalen Hurts's poise throughout the game. He seemed to really be a lot comfortable in this offense than he was a year ago.
Yeah.
Ran the ball extremely well
Agreed.
in this one. And despite not throwing a touchdown pass, the connection he had with A.J. Brown, 10 catches, 155 yards, the brand new acquisition from Tennessee, looking real good.
Yep.
Hurts looks comfortable there. And look, they were on the road too. The Lions defense is, they play hard. This team plays hard. We talked about last year. It's a Dan Campbell kind of culture being built. They fought to the very end. They battled back at the end too. They got some great young talent in Hawkinson and Swift, and Jamison Williams will be joining the team later this year, the first round pick.
Yeah,
they have a lot of pieces, and I think the Lions are going to be just fine. But the Eagles were played how I expected them to play. I want to see if they can replicate that type of performance against a little bit better of a defense, a little bit better of a competition. But putting up 38 points on the Lions to start things off bodes well for this Eagles offense that really had a lot of question marks last season. Now I think they're proven that they can be a top tier offense.
Yeah, the Eagles defense worries me, and they just lost, what's his name, the pass rusher for a whole year, ACL tear from this game. I don't love if I'm an Eagles fan giving up 35 points to the Lions. I mean, especially 14 in the fourth when I know you kind of had the game at that point, but letting the team back in, that's got to be something to look at. But again, it's week 1. But I do think a lot of credit goes to the Lions. This Lions team, again, is going to be feisty. It's going to be involved in a ton of games this year. And if you're the Eagles, especially by the time this win feels even sweeter by midnight last night, when you know that the Cowboys now are going to be in a free fall for the next 6 weeks, possibly. So it's if you're an Eagles fan, you got to feel great right now about your chances to win the division, starting off week 1 with a win, despite some injuries and despite giving up that many points. And it ended up being a really entertaining game. There was some entertaining games throughout the beginning of, that kind of noon hour. One of the games we're talking about next, Patriots Dolphins, was not one of them.
Yeah, no, certainly not. The Patriots and Dolphins, very interesting game to say the least. I don't know what your thoughts were going into this one. I kind of felt it was going to be a close game, that the Patriots would end up winning by like a field goal or something like
Yeah.
that, just because it's Bill Belichick against a still young and unproven Tua and a rookie head coach, Mike McDaniel. But they really come out, and this offense ran itself very efficiently. Tua 23 of 33 for 270 yards, a touchdown. Tyreek Hill right out of the gate with 8 catches, nearly 100 yards in this one. So they were seeming to find a rhythm, eventually in this game, and the Dolphins come away with a 13-point win, 20-7. To me, this game didn't say as much to me about the Dolphins as I think the Patriots are in trouble, and I don't want to make too much out of one game, but they looked so rough against the division opponent that they usually play well. It just seemed really difficult to get anything moving there. Mac Jones didn't seem comfortable. We talked about it, and everyone's been talking about it. The Matt Patricia calling offensive plays just makes no sense, and it's very bizarre. You don't take someone who's dominant on one side of the football and put them on the other side. Dick LeBeau probably wouldn't have called a very good offense in the NFL. He was a defensive guy for a reason. That was his niche, and you stay in those lanes. And unfortunately, it seems that they're going with the Patricia method. The offense looked terrible. The Dolphins looked fine. I still don't have them as a playoff team this year. I have them,
the AFC's so tough. Yeah,
it's really tough. I have them. I think I had them getting 8 or 9 wins this year, but getting there close. But yeah, Patriots. I would say another game or two of this, and I'd already be pressing.
Yeah,
the panic
I
button.
feel good about my Patriots 5-12 prediction. I really do. Dan, I couldn't agree more. I was actually on my Saturday morning show. I said this was one of the 3 things I really wanted to watch for. Tua and Mac Jones have a ton of different pressure on them from different aspects. Tua, we know, is not Josh Allen, and we know Tua is not, Justin Herbert. He's not Joe Burrow. So the pressure on Tua now is to do what the Kirk Cousins, the Dak Prescotts, the Mitchell Trubiskys, those other guys haven't done yet. And what haven't they done? They haven't led their team to a Super Bowl and getting a win. Like even Jimmy Garoppolo, he led his team to the Super Bowl, but yeah, now we know he's kind of limited, and you don't want to like build your team around him. If you are not the freakish athlete and the wow when you walk in the door, even like the Justin Fields, the Trey Lance, where you're just like, that dude is special. If you're not that guy, Baker Mayfield, your job is to win a Super Bowl. Your job is to win a Super Bowl anyways, but your job to save your job, to get the long Kirk's gotten the long contracts because and Dak got the big contract, and Jimmy G got a big contract. But in order to have the second contract and the staying power, you got to do what Russell Wilson did. You got to be the undersized guy who shows enough mobility, who can galvanize and win a Super Bowl and get to another Super Bowl. It's been almost a decade since we saw Russell Wilson in a Super Bowl, and yet we still think very highly of him. So that's what Tua has to do, and that's a ton of pressure, because if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, they're going to be like, all right, we'll pick up the 5th year, but we don't want to necessarily negotiate a long-term deal. He's stuck. Yeah. Kyler Murray got the deal. Well, Kyler Murray will not get a second deal if Kyler Murray doesn't have a Super Bowl appearance or better. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way the NFL works for the undersized guys. So it's a lot of pressure. And I thought Tua played well. And again, Tua playing well in the regular season does not matter. What matters is Tua getting to the playoffs and having like a big moment or two so he can secure that bag for himself. and proved to us he could do it in the big moments. And for Mac, listen, he's in real trouble. I think Mac Jones, I probably would rather have him as my starting quarterback than Tua, all things considered. The problem is now Mac Jones is his talent level is like his ceiling's Kirk Cousins, like we've always said. And now he's got two failed head coach, defensive special teams guys running his offense. And Dan, here's the thing that's really interesting. You got to remember, stay away from the box scores, go to the play-by-play and look at the drives. For teams that struggle offensively, and it's the same thing I was going to say with San Francisco and their quarterbacks who struggle. It's one thing when they score early, like San Francisco did, came out early, or like the Patriots, their first drive, 8 plays, 53 yards, and an interception. But after that, punt, fumble, punt, end of half. That just goes to show you the most production they got was with the scripted plays going into it. Of course, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge could say, here's our first 15. We're scripted. We feel comfortable about this. Execute. After that, when it's just like you got to call the game, punt, end of half. Comes out the second half. They re-script the plays. 15 plays, 92 yards, touchdown. After that, punt, 17 yards. Punt, 4 plays, 7 yards. Fumble. Like, after that, calling the game was a disaster. So it just goes to show you, Kyle Shanahan, who we know is a great play caller, he's got a different animal in his hands. We know that Matt can execute really well the play calls, and Matt can execute a well-played game plan throughout the game. We saw it with Josh McDaniels. They just don't have the people to do that. Whereas Kyle Shanahan is stuck in the opposite end. He can on the fly call all the great plays, but he doesn't necessarily have the trust in his young quarterback to execute all the plays. He's got a limited playbook to work with. So kind of two ends of the different spectrum there. It's an interesting thing to look at for anyone who out there is listening to us. If you want to dig a little deeper on that, go to the plays, go to the drives, because it just goes to show you if they're doing really well at the beginning of the game and at the start of the second half, it's because that's when it's scripted. That's when the coaches have control. And Joe Judge and Matt Patricia are showing you, hey, we can put together 15 plays. After that, my pencil in my ear, I hope I can figure something out.
Not the best on the fly there.
Yeah.
It's a trouble brewing there in New England for sure. The Ravens on the road at the Jets, and Joe Flacco getting that revenge game in, right?
Threw the ball
The Ravens
59 times.
Well, yeah, it's insane.
What are they doing?
It's absolutely insane. He ended up with 300 yards passing on 59 attempts,
What are they
37
doing?
completions. The Jets were struggling from the jump. I mean, both teams were. This was kind of the case of like most teams outside of, like, I don't know, Kansas City or a few others, where everyone was pretty slow to start. Baltimore even only scored 10 first half points in this one. They end up winning 24-9. Just a huge struggle there for the Jets throughout in this game. One touchdown for New York. Lamar Jackson looked good, especially in the second half there, running the offense, finding, hitting some big plays, which is, something that they're going to need to do a lot this year to be able to kind of keep defenses honest. That's going to make, Lamar that much more lethal when he can do stuff with his legs, because they're having to defend way more of the field with the likes of Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay. Those guys played great. So they were able to spread the ball around, get some rushing on the ground, despite the absence yet again for a second straight season of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, playing with a ragtag group of guys. But they were able to get it going, and Lamar Jackson and company end up coming away with a convincing win, even if it was a little bit touch and go there from the start. Meanwhile, I mean, what do we expect from the Jets? Really, this is what we expected from the Jets. I will say, from a fantasy perspective, primarily, a lot of people thought Breece Hall was going to be the bee's knees, and that he was just going to be given the job. Michael Carter's a second-year running back. He's not like an old running back that was aging it out. He got the majority of the carries. He was the lone bright spot, I'd say, here for New York. 10 carries, 60 yards, was able to come through with some nice runs there. Other than that, it's rough. I mean, it's the Jets, and they were playing a really good defense in Baltimore. The Jets maybe are going to squeak out a win or two with Joe Flacco before Zach Wilson returns, if they're lucky. But I had them, 4 wins all year. It's going to be a really, really tough go here for New York.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Baltimore just looks like, Lamar looks like he's out and ready to show people that, he's the Lamar that is going to
He
get a huge
wants the
contract
Deshaun
at some
Watson
point.
deal. He wants
He
the
wants it.
Watson deal. Yeah, I'll say this. My biggest takeaway from this game was Lamar, you should have taken the deal. I'm going to be
Yeah,
worried about Lamar
you and I are agreement on that.
I'm going to worry about Lamar all season long. But I love watching him play. Great. Just get what do the Ravens do? The Ravens, they're just such a great franchise, and John Harbaugh, excuse me, deserves so much credit. Like
He's underrated, right? He flies under the radar. I feel like he's similar to the level of Mike Tomlin. We talk about Tomlin way more.
Well, he talks more. And Harbaugh has his brother even to compete with. Like he just goes out. They run a clean ship. They take care of business. Yeah, they could they cover the spread. They blow out the Jets. And they take care of business. They move on. And they looked good doing it without having to overextend themselves. And the Jets are in some real trouble.
Jets are in trouble indeed.
59 times, Joe Flacco. 59. Stop that.
This should not happen. Well, let's talk about another quarterback who threw way too much in this one. Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz throws 41 times in this game, but it ends up being in a win for Washington, 28-22 over the Jaguars. Or Jaguars. I think I say it weird. Jaguars, I say. I don't know.
Jaguars. I mean, people say that. I don't go like I'm not British. I'm not like Jaguar.
Jaguar. Yeah. 4 touchdowns though for Wentz in this game, Mark. He looked pretty good. Like he had that in sync connection there with Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson out of the backfield.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, for the Jaguars, it's so tough because I want Trevor to succeed, and I know that he's got it. He threw 42 times in this game as well.
Too much.
And they felt like they had to at that point. Wasn't getting enough from the playmakers around him. This might take some time as well. I still feel that the Jaguars are going to be so much better than they were last year, so I'm not panicking on this. And the Commanders aren't just a god-awful team. They're going to be fine with Carson Wentz at the helm, but maybe are they going to be better than I think? I don't know.
They might be. I mean, again, Wentz. This was a great Wentz game because it's like the 2 interceptions. Like he has, and he has those moments on that one where you're just like, oh my god, this is Carson Wentz. Like that's Wentz to a T. And so it's going to be a roller coaster for the Washington Commanders. But I will say, I mean, this was again, if you're a Commanders fan, you got to feel like, okay, we took a breath. We won. We're 1-0. Like the world isn't collapsing around us. Wentz was kind of fun to watch, and he's got weapons. I mean, Antonio Gibson, Scary Terry, Curtis Samuel. I mean, he's got people around him, and so it's going to be interesting, especially as I said, with the Cowboys plummeting here now. The Cowboys could be 0-6. Like, I'm dead serious. If Dak misses the first 6 weeks, the Cowboys, like Cooper Rush, cannot win you a game. And that's one of those funny things where it's like, it's also so funny about NFL rosters where it's like, why have a backup quarterback that cannot win you at least a game or two if your guy goes down? Like Cooper Rush can't win you a game. He can't. Like, and maybe it's as simple as like, Mark, there's not enough guys out there.
Alternatives. I mean,
there's just not. Yeah, like what's the alternative? Like he cannot win you a game. Like they're not going to win a game if Cooper Rush starts.
I'm not even saying this facetiously. If they can't do the big Jimmy G deal, I would think getting Mason Rudolph in there.
Yeah,
I think if you're the team, it'd be a win-win.
He could win you at least a game. Yeah. Like seriously, like Cooper Rush cannot win you a game. He just can't. So, like, if you're Washington, New York, and Philly, you're all 1-0. You're all looking around each other going like, what's going on here? All right, now is the time. You have got to stack up wins. So if you're Washington, you got to feel good. And it's going to be a roller coaster with Wentz. For the Jags, for the love of God, don't make him throw 42 times. Even if it's getting out of hand, you owe it to his development to not throw it 42 times. Lawrence, to whose credit, there was, again, it's the flashes. We're like, geez, this kid's ceiling is just the moon. It's the moon. He's got to learn to take a little off it. Sometimes the dude just throws fastballs.
Yeah, like, he does. He rockets it.
He's 6'6". You forget just how big he is. The dude is huge. when we talk about Josh Allen being huge, I mean, like Trevor Lawrence is 6'6", like he's got to pack on a little more weight, but he's probably 225. I mean, the dude is massive. So the Jaguars, again, feeling improvements, feeling good this morning. You were in that game. You had a chance, and you're not a disaster. They're not going to be, again, like the Texans, like the Falcons. Your goal probably is your goal isn't to lose games like a Seahawks and the Falcons, but you want to see that, like, hey, we're feisty. We can be in every game.
100%. And that's what you just need to see, that week in and week out, to have some sort of, confidence going into each week that you can compete and get things done. But I mean, look, if the Cowboys are this bad, if the Eagles, stumble, Washington could be one of those sneaky teams that,
absolutely,
somehow wins the division like they did a few years ago.
If it all it takes now for Washington to win the division is, you're absolutely right, the Eagles, another key big injury, or you know what I mean, they go on a weird stretch, and Washington is very capable of winning 9 games, and again, that could win this division. In all seriousness, this division could be ugly, like it was when they won it, winning 9 games a couple years ago. Like it could get ugly. I think Philly is still poised to get into the double-digit wins, and especially with Dallas being in the tailspin that they'll be in. So, but you're right. Wins like this are going to matter for Washington big time.
No question. The Browns go to the Panthers in another one of those revenge games for Baker Mayfield. Baker said he was going to fuck them up, and that did not happen. Instead, it was Cleveland that got the last laugh in this one. Look, Baker, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. Didn't look great. Did have a couple of those big splash plays that had been eluding the Panthers, at least for sure the last season. Christian McCaffrey, first game back, didn't do Christian McCaffrey things, but there were still splashes at moments there, and he scored as well. And look, late Baker was able to get some of that energy going and make things really close and tense, and put the team
Jacoby
up late.
Jacoby, yeah.
And yes, exactly. And then the Panthers defense lets Brissett and the Browns drive down the field in no time and get the game-winning field goal, 26-24 victory there for Cleveland. That's a tough loss there for the Panthers. I mean, really, that was one I wouldn't say that I just penciled them in, because it still was the Panthers and the Browns have a good roster, but it was one they should have won at home, and that's not how you want to start things off there for the season. But perhaps there are greener pastures down the road, given that Baker's still got to get a feel for this Ben McAdoo offense and get assimilated to this whole group of guys. But you don't have a lot of margin for error if you're in Carolina, so it's tough sledding.
My biggest takeaway in this is definitely feel like the Panthers needed this one. And I definitely feel like if you are a Browns fan, temper some expectations. It was great to see Jacoby Brissett play a complete game and help you win the game in the end. He almost gave it away, but he helped you win the game in the end. Now you gotta be mentally preparing yourself, though, for every defensive coach in the NFL loves today, because now they have legitimate film and you know what I mean, from your legitimate offense and what your game plans are trying to do to win actual games. The preseason just gives you we're trying shit. We're trying to be even throw you different things so you maybe throw off. Every offensive coordinator was trying to win a game yesterday. So they were all showing you, this is what we do really well. And this is what we do to try to against this stuff. You know what I mean? That we think. So now defensive coordinators will start to be able to pick up on stuff. Now, again, week 2, week 3, by the end of the first quarter of the season, week 4, that's when that's why it always gets tougher. Andy Reid's always undefeated in September, because Andy Reid just goes to the drawing board, comes up with a bunch of shit you never seen before, and the weather's good, and he's got all these fast guys, he's got a great quarterback, and it's like a playground for him. It gets always tougher come October, November. So I just want to temper it a little bit. The Browns fans got to feel good being 1-0, got to feel good, because your hope is you can win 3 or 4 by the time Watson comes back, and then he can lead you on a run. But this, I think this could still get ugly for Cleveland before Watson gets back.
Yeah, it sure can. The Colts at the Texans.
Despicable Colts.
I don't even know what to say about this game. The Colts did not look.
They ran so many plays. Matt Ryan threw the ball 50 times, and Jonathan Taylor had 31 carries.
Yeah.
What the hell? Like, what the hell?
Speaking of a lot of plays, the Bengals ran 93 plays in that.
I know. It was my lock of the week on Saturday morning that the Colts would win by 7. And I'm so pissed. I'm so pissed.
The Texans at moments, the thing was, okay, they had their moments, but if you told me that like the Colts and Texans tied week 1, my thinking is, oh wow, the Texans probably looked really good. I still didn't really get that. I thought I got both teams aren't looking that great. But the Colts flashed at least at moments with Michael Pittman. Like, it does seem like there's going to be a Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman thing going on this year. And Jonathan Taylor did Jonathan Taylor things. But, if you're the Colts, man, you got to win this game. Like, you can't start 0-1 with your first loss coming to the Texans. Well, it's not a loss, but it technically is if you're the Colts. This is a loss. It's a tie, but it's a loss.
Yeah, the only good thing for you is the Titans blew it, and we'll talk about them in a second as well. And now you do have a tie, and they have a loss, so you do have that kind of.
You're still ahead of them in the pecking
order. You still have that half game on the rival to win the division. So I want to give the Colts time. Obviously, this offense is clicking. They just couldn't put points up. Like, I mean, how do you have 161 yards from your star running back with 31 carries? How does your quarterback throw for 352 yards and you only score 20 points? Like, how does that happen? Like, it's wild. And if you're a Houston Texas fan, I know I said it before, you got to feel good. This is a win for you too. Your goal is to lose games, but to have a feisty team. You lost games and your team looks feisty, and you may actually have your quarterback. Davis Mills has got 16 more games. He played better than Mac Jones yesterday, but I think a little bit of that is his system versus Mac's, and that's crazy to say because he's got Lovie Smith as his coach, but at least they have a real offensive coordinator. So it's just, he played objectively better than Trey Lance.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we'll see.
No, I know. I mean, we were talking about this even last year. Like, just because he wasn't the flashy player to pick and to talk about, he performed admirably given the circumstances last year. Like, I don't know why everyone, like, he could be their guy for the next 6-7 years. Like, it's very plausible that could be the case. The Giants pull out a 1-point victory on the road at the Tennessee Titans. The aforementioned
going for
Titans
2
there. And they were, going bold, and it doesn't work out. But the Giants get the victory, a much needed victory to kick off the Brian Daboll era there in New York. What a game for them, really. Daniel Jones throws 2 touchdowns, a pick, goes 17-21. He looked competent. I wouldn't say, there are still concerns. The big news really is Saquon appears to be back.
Saquon.
He looked good. He looked real good there.
164 yards and 18 carries. And again, the Titans defense is not special.
No, they're not great.
But man, the Titans were the 1 seed last year. And this is just one of those, you can't at home lose to a Giants team that in the end really is trying to get at their new quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, they won the turnover battle, did the Titans as well. They didn't turn it over one time. And, Tannehill goes 20-33 for 266 yards, a couple scores himself. Derrick Henry just had an okay day out there, but it doesn't seem like they have. I mean, I truly think that, and I didn't think this before the year, it appears to me that the loss of A.J. Brown might be a bigger deal than we thought, because to not have a true stud on the outside, I mean, they have the likes of Dontrell Hilliard and Kyle Phillips leading the way for the receiving core. And, Treylon Burks is an unproven rookie. That could be the downfall of this team come, later in the season.
it feels good as I mean, I don't know if it feels good as a Giants fan. I mean, it does. Winning games feels good, but Daniel Jones, I mean, this was nice. And it just goes to show if I feel good about, if I'm a Giants fan, is we have our coach. Like, this guy could be our coach. He could really help us build the culture and be the guy after we've run through so many recently. If you're a Titans fan, this is the type of loss where you start just looking at yourself going, I'm ready for Malik. I don't care at this point. Like, this is ridiculous. And Tannehill wasn't like bad. He didn't lose them the game, but you can't lose. You can't lose at home to a Giants team it's basically rebuilding. And so it's something to keep our eyes on for sure.
Yeah, let's go back to the NFC North now. The Packers at the Vikings. Whew. Green Bay did not look good in this one. The Vikings, however, they did look good. 23-7 victory over the Green Bay Packers here. Kirk Cousins leading the way with 277 yards through the air and a couple tutties. 90 yards on the ground for Dalvin Cook, and Justin Jefferson is just unbelievable. 184 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns receiving.
Yeah.
The Vikings kind of were dominant from the start. They took a 17-0 lead into the break. Packers scored a touchdown in the second half. That's it. And it's a 23.
Saw a little Jordan Love. Little Jordan Love action. Listen, the Packers last year started off with a dud. This year started off with a dud. I'm not going to write off the Packers yet. I will just say, though, it's classic Aaron Rodgers. People are not critical enough of him. The dude looks so checked out. And I get it. You have a drop that's a sure touchdown. You have got to be the leader of your football team. Like, whenever the camera's on him, he's just like, ugh. He's worse than Jay Cutler. Like, I mean, he is just so apathetic, lethargic, so like, you all suck. Oh, this is ridiculous. What am I dealing with? He threw teammates under the bus, not by name, but like his post press conference was so just like smarmy. I just, leadership and being a leader and rallying and working with your guys in adversity in the foxhole when it's bad is a part of what makes great quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers continues to fall down my list of top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time with stuff like this. The dude's talent is all world. Who he is as a human being and rallying his guys and being able, you don't want to be Broncos country. Let's ride. Like, that's fake and phony. But we talked about it earlier, even the young quarterbacks, like a Justin Fields, without having to be like in your face, rah guy, like, no, they follow him. And they're all in this together. Aaron, it's like, oh, don't talk to him. He's upset with me. Oh my God. And he just kind of like walks by you like, ugh. It's the body language and watch is so bad. I also don't want to overhype Minnesota. I don't. Minnesota is a lot of people are high in Minnesota right now.
They're going 12-5 this year.
Yes. I'm going to still wait and see. I'm going to wait and see. Good win for him, though. Good win.
It was a good win for the Vikings, that's for sure. I will just add to your point about the Aaron and the Packers. That is what we've seen with these playoff mishaps and these playoff duds over the last decade with them. It's when the going gets tough, he doesn't elevate them to the level that they need to be elevated, right? And that's a prime example of why Aaron's body language can be a detriment despite his talent. It really can. And the thing is, Aaron, it's the situation. So like, you got to deal with it.
Make it work.
Say, woe is me in week
signed
one.
The extension. He signed the extension. He wanted to be there. Like, exactly. Again, anytime he's like, oh, it's like the dude has signed multiple extensions with Green Bay instead of just hitting free agency. So he's like, he needs to wear some of these more, but he'll end up winning MVP and throwing for, so it's like, again, I don't want to overreact.
He's got the Peaky Blinders haircut now, so he's ready to go. The Chiefs go on the road at the Cardinals and right out of the gates fire away. And they roll to a 44-21 victory. Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things in this one. 360 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. Travis Kelce had his typical type of day. Their offense looked perfectly fine with the void of Tyreek Hill. They have other weapons to pass it around to. Juju Smith-Schuster had himself a pretty decent game too. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire got 2 touchdowns. So everyone getting a piece of the pie in this Kansas City offense. in this one. The Cardinals, meanwhile, and Kyler Murray didn't seem to be very much in sync.
Yeah.
I am not pressing the panic button on them either, but we also haven't seen a lot from the Cardinals in terms of but they've been super dominant in the past. Have they really? Maybe for like a few game stretches. They were undefeated for an extended period of time, but you know, other than that, like we haven't seen just sheer dominance come from the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so that does give me a little bit of concern. I think James Conner is perfectly solid in that offense, and they have new pieces with Marquise Brown there, and they're going to get DeAndre Hopkins back in 5 weeks. But this is still going to ride on the shoulders of Kyler Murray, and you got to be able to make some third down conversions that he didn't make, and especially when you're playing the Chiefs. I mean, you can't. Obviously, that's the thing. You can't, fault them too much. They played the Chiefs, and the Chiefs did what they do. But still, it's not the ideal look from the Cardinals that I was hoping to see more of a shootout than it actually became.
The Chiefs saw what the Bills did and said, all right, we got to match that. Like the Chiefs, it seems like they're playing the game as anything you can do, we can do better. And they want to stay neck and neck with the Bills. And I think the Chiefs, rightfully so, should feel a little disrespected about all the Bills love. They, everyone's saying, oh, the Bills lost that game. The Chiefs didn't win it in Arrowhead. Well, the Chiefs did win it. You know what I mean? Like and I think the Chiefs came out showing, hey, we realized we screwed up, and we let the Bengals have one, and and we should have been in that game. And I think the Chiefs, it's a great win for them on the road against a playoff team from last year with a star quarterback who just got a big contract, with a star head coach who just got a contract extension. And you never love it if you're a fan of the Cardinals, right? Your quarterback signs a record deal. Your head coach gets an extension. Your GM gets an extension. You lose by really more than 23 at home, because that game was what 30 something to 7. I mean, the Cardinals scored 2 late touchdowns that it's just like the game was way over.
Yeah.
And what does your coach say at the press conference? We need better practice habits. Like immediately taking a dig at your star quarterback and all the rumors of this offseason that all your guy does is play Call of Duty. That is, these guys are locked in. The GM, the head coach, the quarterback all have long deals that are tied together that are too much money to get rid of within the next year or two. So it's you got to get happy quick in Arizona. And yes, you can just say, hey, it's the Chiefs, but at home, blowout loss, really, because again, a 23-point loss is a blowout loss. It's more than that. You got 2 late touchdowns when the Chiefs were like the white flag was up. So not great for a start for Arizona.
Yeah. Good news for them is they'll be second in the NFC West after tonight.
Absolutely.
So Raiders at the Chargers. Chargers pull out a 5-point win. It really felt like the Chargers were in a lot more control in this game.
They were.
Maybe the score led on as the Raiders put up 6 in the fourth quarter to 0 for the Chargers. But yeah, I mean, it was the introduction of the Josh McDaniels offense with Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, and they played well offensively in this one. But Chargers at the end, just too much to overcome. Justin Herbert just made a couple insane throws.
He is insane.
He's super, super talented. So yeah, I mean, it was a division rivalry, 2 talented teams going at it. The Chargers come out on top, like I think we both predicted there, and nothing super surprising out of it. Nothing really catching my eye other than, the Chargers are pretty good. And I think the Raiders are going to be in this thing all year long.
Who wins the AFC West could come down to one stat and one stat only. Who gets the most sacks in the AFC West? Because all 4 quarterbacks are really good to great to Hall of Fame worthy. And all offensive have a ton of pieces that you're scared of and are good offenses. Khalil Mack had 3 sacks. The Chargers had 6. The Raiders had none. Like the Raiders pass rush and the Chargers offensive line is good. It's getting better. And so that's going to be the difference maker. It's what I'm excited to watch the Broncos front tonight. The Chiefs have an okay pass rush, and Jones is good. You know what I mean? But you have got to be able, the Mac Bosa having 4.5 sacks. That's what the Chargers dreamed of when they made that trade. That could literally be the determining factor who wins the AFC. Now, the good thing for the Chiefs is, even though their pass rush is maybe second best, third, it's not as bad as the Raiders, they probably have the best offensive line. So does that overweigh when they play the Chargers? We'll get to see Thursday night. Cannot wait. Best game of the weekend, Thursday night. Chargers Chiefs in Arrowhead.
It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to that game on a short week. No teams know each other better than the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs there. Let's wrap things up with the Sunday night game, and the Buccaneers put a hurt on the Dallas Cowboys 19-3. And look, we'll talk about what Dak Prescott leaving this game with a fractured thumb. He's going to get surgery. He's likely out 6 to 8 weeks. So they're in trouble. But I don't want to underscore that with, like, they looked bad
before
throughout, because he got hurt in the fourth quarter. Like, this offense looked really bad throughout this entire game. Yes, it's the Bucs defense, which is pretty solid, but the Bucs defense isn't, the Steelers or, the elites of the elite. They're really good. But the Cowboys offense should be really good as well, but they were not. It was they scored 3 points in the first quarter, didn't score again, and it is looking like tough times ahead for the Dallas Cowboys here. Meanwhile, the Bucs, they played their game. They managed the time of possession, ran the ball effectively when they could, and Tom Brady looked just fine. He did what he needed to do to have a convincing win, a comfortable win there in Dallas.
Yeah, Tom Brady looked just fine is the best way to say it. I will say this: offensive line for the Bucs held up. Brady looked mobile. I mean, watching Brady's feet in the pocket, there were a couple throws he made on the move that were like, oh, I think Tom knows this year, especially till he can get Jensen back, he's going to have to be light on his feet. And no one's better at getting the ball out quick and accurately than Tom Brady. So the Bucs, that's good. I will also say Julio Jones, he has, I think, just enough left in the tank to be really feisty this year. I think there's some really feistiness. I know he didn't have a big night, but there were flashes when you watch him run routes. You're like, oh, that did not look like Tennessee Julio Jones. I think part of it is you just get to the Tom Brady effect. Like, I'm sure Julio in Tennessee was like, what the hell? Why am I not still in Atlanta? Why didn't I get a big deal from Atlanta to wind up my career there? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a mental thing to playing football in that way. And I think that there were some flashes. Now, for the Cowboys, like I said it, I think tailspin begins. I think this coaching staff is absolutely incapable of making Cooper Rush a winning quarterback. They need to find a way to win 2 games before Dak Prescott gets back. They've got to find a way to be at least 2-4, to be in the realm of we have a chance here. We have our $200 million man in Dak Prescott. And you're absolutely right. Dak in this offense was not good at all. And that is, again, we all knew it. You should have paid Dak early, and you should have never paid Zeke. And they paid Zeke too much, too early, and they paid Dak way too much, way too late. I think Dak's best days are either behind him or they are still in it. And the problem is right now, this year and next year are part of it. And this year he's going to miss 6 games with a hand injury. Nothing you could do about that. That sucks for Dak. But he was not looking good. And this offense was looking out of sync, out of whack, and not good before the injury. The way the Cowboys have a chance to win some games here, if they don't go after Jimmy G, they at least now can say our identity is we're going to run the bleep out of the football. Like that's, and they have 2 running backs and they have a decent offensive line. And especially when you get Peters in there to just say, hey, we are going to run the ball 45 bleeping times a game. And their defense is good enough to hopefully get a turnover and kind of rise to the occasion. That's what you got to be convincing yourself if you're a Dallas fan. And then you say, we get Dak back, and hopefully the wheels of that machine are running enough to where that's what Dak thrives in anyways. Run the ball more than you throw, play action, Dak on the move, hit CeeDee Lamb for big chunk gains. That's what that offense should be, and it's not because they paid Dak a lot of money, so they're trying to justify it.
Let's say it's 6 games before Dak comes back.
What are those 6 games?
They play the Bengals, the
Loss.
Giants, Commanders, Rams, and Eagles.
So they have
And
got to
then
be
rounded out with
circling
the
the
Lions.
Giants and the Commanders that's our two. We got to win those two. In division, you'll probably lose to the Eagles unless you have Jimmy G by that time. If you get Jimmy G in this week or next week, you give him a week to learn the offense. Maybe you're more competitive at that time. Yeah, I mean, that's brutal. They're going to lose the Bengals. The Bengals lost. The Bengals will be motivated. They'll smell blood in the water. Giants are now feisty. Commanders are certainly feisty, but those are the ones you got to circle. The Rams, they'll lose to the Rams. And then Eagles, I would have had them losing to the Eagles anyway. So, yeah. Not great.
Some quick key injuries. Just keep an eye on. T. Higgins left the game with a concussion.
Yeah, concussion.
We'll see. Hopefully he can be back next week. If not, the week after. We mentioned Dak Prescott. Chris Godwin had a hamstring. He left early. Keenan Allen left with a hamstring injury. Those are never, great to start a year off. Those tend to linger. Najee Harris with a foot injury. Elijah Mitchell for the 49ers. I mean, that could be a big loss there.
MCL?
With his knee. I don't know if we have an official
I thought I saw his MCL
update. I haven't seen the most recent update on Elijah Mitchell, but that could be an issue certainly moving forward for the 49ers. A couple hours ago, to miss about 2 months with an MCL sprain. That's tough. Now obviously the 49ers scheme, they can fit a lot of running backs into that, but they're going to need guys to carry that load. And then Mac Jones too got injured. He had a back injury. So it's like there were a bevy of injuries in week 1 to start the
There always are.
NFL
Week
season.
1 is a brutal week for injuries.
It is. But hopefully, the guys get back on track. Hopefully there weren't too many, hefty losses there.
It's weird how it works, but it takes a week or two for your body to get acclimated, like back to this is
used to taking.
I'm getting beat up at full speed from other grown men, and that's why you see injuries early and you see injuries late, because it's like by then the end of the season your body's so worn down. All it takes is you plant the wrong way. And a sprain from weeks earlier, we actually was a slight tear that then becomes a complete tear. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just that type of thing. And TJ Watt is so fittingly fitting into the Watt brothers of they just stop getting so big. You just keep lifting too many weights, and now you're getting more injured. And TJ and JJ was out with the COVID this week. So,
they don't know how. I mean, and it's what makes them so great is that their motor is 110% at all times. They are giving it everything every single play.
10% luck, 15% skill, 100% power of whatever that song
Concentrated
is.
Power of will.
That's yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's the watch.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, yeah, we got Broncos Seahawks tonight. I don't think we need to spend much time on a preview for it. Broncos win by a hefty margin, I would say. I'm going to take Broncos by 13.
If they don't, then that's bad news for the Broncos. Again, I think one of the things that we have to remember too, and it hit me today, Packers offense also didn't look good. Well, their offensive coordinator is now a head coach in Denver. Their quarterbacks coach is now the offensive coordinator in Chicago. You got to remember this move. In the Niners offense at times in the second half didn't look good. Well, their offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach are now the head coach and wide receiver coach in Miami. You got to remember too, those missing those coaching moves are sometimes more important. We talked about it obviously with Mac Jones than the player movement. And so very excited for Nathaniel Hackett. I heard some interviews. He did a great interview with Pardon My Take over the summer. During Grit Week.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
He kind of stole my heart a little bit. This guy seems like a great guy to root for. Russ, I think, is going to be very highly motivated. Keep your eye on the pass rush for Denver. If the pass rush for Denver looks nasty, then they could really compete for the AFC West. They really, really could. And if their offensive line is above average. So keep an eye for that. And again, if you're a Seahawks fan, if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm hoping for the Atlanta Falcons. I want my team to be scrappy. I want them to be in it. I want them to almost win it and then lose, because you do not want Geno Smith or Drew Lock anywhere near your starting quarterback this time next year.
Yeah, no, 100%. You need to You need to have a contingency plan in place, and
And the
a
primetime
future
games have
plan
been kind
for
of
it.
blowouts. I think this one will be one as well. Not
Yeah.
entertaining Thursday, Sunday. I think Monday we're going to get a little bit of the same.
Yep, I think you are correct. Well, that should be a fun one. We'll obviously be returning back here for the week 2 recap, but that rounds it out. We are back. We are in full swing. It feels good. I'm excited. We got
Yeah.
football back, and it was a great Sunday of football watching, and looking forward to tonight and this upcoming Thursday too. A couple interesting storylines to look at in these two games coming up before next Sunday. So we hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, Mark, do you want to say some
Well,
parting
I just want,
words?
and a final note, there would be no football lounge without Nate Byrne. We wouldn't have met each other without Nate Byrne.
So true.
In a lot of ways, for all of our listeners out there, this show is going to be very therapeutic for Dan and I throughout this season. And so we appreciate you going on this journey with us, and we love doing it. And so we thank you for tuning on in. And once again, just a shout out to who Nate was as a person, and we miss him dearly. We will never forget him, and thank God for football season.
Seriously, it couldn't have come at a better time, honestly, for sure. And yeah, for those of you listening who maybe didn't know Nate, or got to know him just a little bit, maybe turn on a stick song for old time's sake,
Yeah,
and
watch a Bond movie.
yeah, get a Michelob Ultra, and
Preferably, he
get
liked
going.
Roger Moore. We always argue about this. He loved Roger Moore, and that also tells you a lot about who Nate was.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Yeah, I'm a Pierce Brosnan fan, honestly,
Ah,
all the
yeah,
way. Although I like Sean Connery. It's between those two guys for me, but I know he was always defending Timothy Dalton too. That he's like, hey, just give the guy a chance here, will
yeah.
you? He's big Bond fan for sure. So yeah, rest in peace, Nate. We love you, buddy.